Hey guys, I'm Shelly, the creator behind the Vintage Hen and Chick, and if you love upcycling, thrift flips, and giving old pieces a second chance, you're in the right place. Today, I've got 3 simple DIYs. We're talking milk paint, Dixie Belle Chalk Paint, and IOD Transfers that bring serious charm without blowing your budget. So let's get to flipping because these before and afters are so good. For project 1, I have this wood tray. I picked this up at a garage sale for just a couple of dollars. Anytime I see trays like this out and about, I pick them up because they make wonderful flips. And we are going to give this tray 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Colonel Mustard chalk paint. I love this color of chalk paint because to me, it gives a piece kind of summer, fall vibes, and I think it's just a really nice color that can go with many different seasons. So I'm going to give this 2 even coats, front, back, sides, all around. Then I'm going to let it dry completely, and once the 2 coats of paint have dried completely, then we'll move on to the next step in this project. So I gave the tray 2 even coats of the Colonel Mustard and I let it dry completely. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is applying some transfers to the inside bottom of the tray. And for this, I'm going to be using IOD's Midnight Garden transfer set. This transfer set is kind of a full sheet. There's 4 sheets that you can either put together to make one large image or separate them out. You could also cut them up if you want. They're pretty versatile. But for this tray, I'm going to put 1 full sheet on the bottom part of the tray. And so I'm just laying the sheet into the tray so that way I can kind of measure where I need to trim it. And I have this little tool. I'm not sure what it's called. It came with a little kit of tools that I got maybe at Walmart, maybe at Amazon. I don't remember, but it works really good to score your transfers, to mark where you need to cut it. So I'm going to use this tool just to score where I'm going to cut this transfer. You can use your fingernail too if you don't have this tool, no big deal. It just helps to get a nice fit for the transfer. So I'm going to score that, and then once it's scored, I'm going to know exactly where to trim off the transfer. I'm going to trim it off, and then once I get it all trimmed off, then we're going to get it placed into the bottom of the tray. I've got my transfer cut to size to fit the inside of the tray, and now I'm just flipping it over and I'm just folding back that transfer backing sheet just a little bit. So I just have some of the transfer exposed, and I'm kind of starting with just a starter area on the tray because it's such a big transfer. I want to make sure that I get it on evenly. So I started it by laying it down in that one section, keeping the transfer backing on the transfer. And now I'm just going to work from underneath and slowly remove that transfer backing as I press the transfer down onto the bottom of the tray. This is just really helping me get that transfer exactly where I want it to be and to fit really nicely. So with all transfers, they're very easy to apply. I'm just taking my transfer tool and I'm rubbing it over the transfer all over the entire thing. You want to make sure that you start to get that transfer stuck to your project piece. And now I'm just going to start from one side of the transfer, work my way all the way to the other side, and slowly start peeling up that transfer vellum as I'm rubbing with my transfer tool. Now, if you ever have a spot on your transfer where you've rubbed and it didn't quite stick to your piece, that's no big deal. Just lay your transfer right back down again and just keep rubbing until it is stuck to your project piece. So I'm going to continue to rub on the transfer while I'm removing this transfer vellum until I get this beautiful transfer completely adhered to my wood tray. And then once I have that attached to the tray, then I'm going to take the transfer vellum and I'm going to rub it over the transfer to burnish it in. This is a large transfer. I want to definitely make sure that I don't have any bubbles or wrinkles in my transfer, and burnishing is what's going to help you do that. You can also use your hands. A lot of times I go back and forth. I'll use the vellum or my hands or a combination of both. So I'm just burnishing my transfer in, and now we'll move on to the next step in this project. Now that I have the transfer applied to my tray, it's time to seal in the chalk paint and the transfer. And for that, I'm going to be using Dixie Belle's clear coat in the satin finish. And I'm going to give the entire tray one even coat over everything. The top, the sides, the bottom. I want everything to be sealed in. And that way I have a nice protective coating on this tray. So that way someone can use it for serving beverages or food, or just using it for decor. With this clear coat that I'm using, it's going to give it a nice protective coating. So I'm going to give it the one even coat over the entire thing. I'm going to let it dry completely, and then we'll move on to the final step in this project. So my clear coat has completely dried, and I wanted to add a little bit of dimension to the tray. And so I'm going to be using my Dixie Belle black wax just around the inside edges of the tray. And so I'm going to apply some wax with my brush and then wipe it back with a dry paper towel. Now, because I sealed it first with a clear coat, that is going to prevent this black wax from really absorbing super black onto the tray. I didn't want that. I wanted to add a little bit of dimension with the black wax, but I didn't want it super dark. So that clear coat that I applied first is going to kind of act as a barrier so that paint doesn't suck up and absorb a whole bunch of that black wax and make it really, really dark. And so I'm just going to continue to apply the black wax around the inside edges of the tray, use my paper towel to wipe off the excess and blend everything in, and then this project will be complete. And here it is. Can you believe this started out as a plain old wooden tray? A little chalk paint, a gorgeous IOD transfer, and now it's bursting with vintage charm. Would you try something like this? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you do with a tray like this. For project 2, I have this wall hanging that is made out of a piece of barn wood and some rusty, crusty little chicken feeder cups. I picked this up at my friend Nora's garage sale, and I loved everything about this. I did want to add a little bit of color to that barn wood to match my style a little bit more, because this piece I'm keeping. I'm not putting it in my booth. I just love it so much. So I'm going to start out by taking off the little feeder cups that are attached to the barn wood. I'll get those all off, and then once those are off, then we'll move on to the next step. I did take my piece of barnwood out into the garage and gave it one coat of shellac because I'm going to be painting it with Sweet Pickins Milk Paint in the color Flour Sack. And I wanted kind of a primer barrier on that barnwood because it's very, very dry. And I didn't want my milk paint to just absorb into the wood. I wanted to get some crackling and crazing. And so I mixed up equal parts of milk paint and equal parts of warm water. I stirred it up for about 2 minutes and then I set it aside for about 10 minutes to thicken up. You want your milk paint about the consistency of a melted milkshake. I'm going to give this board 2 coats of the milk paint. I am going to use my blow dryer on each coat to dry it and to kind of encourage the crackling and the crazing. Once I have 2 coats done and it's been dried, then we'll move on to the next step. I did 2 coats of milk paint on my board and I dried each coat with my blow dryer. And as you can see, I have some beautiful crackling and crazing in my milk paint. And now I'm just going to take my 220 grit sanding sponge and I'm going to sand my milk paint nice and smooth. And I'm also going to distress the edges of my board a little bit. And so I'm going to continue to sand the board until I get everything nice and smooth and I get the distressing that I want. And then we'll move on to the next step. It is time to seal my milk paint in. I took a baby wipe and wiped all the sanding dust off my board. And now I'm going to seal it with Sweet Pickins black oil wax. And I'm just going to pour a little bit of the oil wax on the board. It's not a big surface. You don't need a whole lot. And I'm going to use a brush to spread it all out. Once I have my board coated with the oil wax, I'm going to set it aside for about 10 minutes. I really want that oil wax to absorb into my milk paint and really highlight that crackling and crazing that I created with the milk paint and with the sanding. Once I have that set aside about 10 minutes, then we'll come back and move on to the final step in this project. It's been about 10 minutes and as you can see, that oil wax really absorbed nicely into that milk paint. And now I'm just going to take a dry paper towel and wipe off any excess oil wax on my board until it is completely dry. And then once that's done, we'll move on to the final step in this project. All that's left to be done to complete this project is reattach these little rusty, crusty feeder cups back onto my barnwood board, and then this project will be complete. Oh, you guys, how cute is this? From that chippy milk paint to those rusty old chicken feeder cups, this wall hanging is giving me all the vintage farmhouse feels. It's the perfect mix of rustic, functional, and one-of-a-kind charm. Where would you hang something like this in your home? Drop your ideas below because I might just steal them from you. So project 3 is the easiest, simplest upcycle that anyone can do. I picked up this teapot at a thrift store for $2.50. I like the way it looks, but I wanted to add a little something to it. And right now, white and blue china is super trending, and so I wanted to add a transfer. And for this, I'm using a transfer from the IOD Fairy Tale Florals transfer set. And it's this beautiful array of navy blue flowers that I thought would look beautiful on this teapot. And so I'm just going to peel back the backing on my transfer, and I'm going to lay my transfer down on the teapot where I want it. I'm going to start on one side with my transfer tool, work my way over to the other, and then start peeling back that transfer vellum. And then you can see that the transfer is applied to this teapot. When you apply transfers to surfaces like this teapot, it's very easy to do. They apply beautifully. So I'm going to continue to apply the transfer to the teapot. Once I have it completely applied, then I'm going to take my transfer vellum and I'm going to rub it over that transfer to burnish it in. I want to make sure that my transfer is nice and attached to the teapot and that I don't have any bubbles or wrinkles in the transfer. I do need to seal the transfer in, and this teapot has a very matte finish to it. So I'm going to be using my Dixie Belle clear coat in the flat finish. I'm going to give one good coat of the clear coat over the entire teapot to seal that transfer in. And what's really nice with this flat clear coat by Dixie Belle, it is the perfect match to the matte finish on this teapot. You can't even see where I've applied the clear coat and where I didn't. It just blends in beautifully. And so I'm going to continue to give the teapot one even coat of the clear coat over the entire thing. And then once that's dried, this project is complete. Isn't this so cute? This little teapot makeover was so simple, just one IOD transfer, and now it's full of charm and personality. Totally beginner friendly and such an easy way to dress up a thrifted find. Would you give a project like this a try? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you love these flips, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a DIY. And let me know in the comments which project was your favorite. I'll be back next week with more creative fun. I'll see you then.